Welcome, everyone, on this fabulous Thursday. I was going to say July 5th. Oh, my goodness, it's August 5th. Wow, time is going by fast. September, October, November, and December, my four favorite months are coming up, so I'm super excited for that. Anyways, you are listening to another episode of the Afterlife Chronicles and Beyond. I am your host, Nicole Strickland, on the WLTK-DB network. That's WLTK-DB.com, as well as the letstalk.com. Lots of new stuff added to the brand new website. Please get over there and check it out. We are broadcasting simultaneously, well, on the site, but you can go to Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and then next week we are going to be broadcasting live from LinkedIn as well. So you can just find twitter.com WLTKDB, youtube.com WLTKDB. You get the just there, just WLTKDB. Just say it over and over, and you're going to get used to saying it, and you're going to memorize it. So anyways, I have a little in the background. I know it's still light out, but you can kind of see it. I have this light that kind of, you can switch different colors. It's one of those little accent lights. And so I have it set to green just because I was in a green mood today, which is fine. And then also I put up some Halloween lights because it's time for that. So anyways, I hope you're all or having a good night, I should say. It's weird because I co-host Tana Voices Radio on Tuesday nights, and then I do this show on Thursday nights. But Thursday always seems like Tuesday to me. It's the weirdest thing. But anyways, yeah, the weekend's coming up. This week is flying by fast. So enough of me rambling. I'm really looking forward to having Lon Strickler on. He is a Fortean Researcher, author, blogger at the highly popular and syndicated Phantoms and Monsters blog. You can get there by visiting phantomsandmonsters.com. He's also an accomplished author, many books, Winged Cryptids, Humanoids, Monsters, and Anomalous Creatures Casebook, Alien Disclosure, Experiencers Expose Reality, Mothman Dynasty, Chicago's Winged Humanoids, and many more. And so, Lon, thank you so much for joining me tonight, and welcome to the Afterlife Chronicles. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Nicole.
It's been a while.
Been a long time. Yeah, it's been a while.
I know, it's been forever, and now I'm returning the favor. I've been on your show a few times, and now I have you on mine, so welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, it's always great talking with you. So I figured we'd get into a little bit of some cryptids and all that cool stuff tonight. So
ready to go.
I like to start out, I mean, some people are kind of unsure about starting out with the whole, oh, how did you get started in the field, blah, blah, blah. But I like to start out with that. I like to hear about people's journey as a paranormal researcher. And so let's talk about yours. How did you get into all this good stuff?
Well, I started young. I was actually around 8 or 9 when I was born and raised near Gettysburg. So I used to spend a lot of summers out on the battlefield. So I'd get on my bike and go down the road and, spend a summer afternoon there. And one day I was in an area they call Valley of Death, which is between Little Round Top, Devil's Den, and the wheat field.
Right.
And I was on the road, and all of a sudden, just like a TV screen opened up. And all my senses were heightened. I was seeing soldiers. I was hearing gunfire.
Oh my gosh.
Smelling gunpowder, the whole 9 yards. And that kept up for about 30 seconds. And, I'm standing there stunned. And then this thing went away. So that was really the day I knew something was up. I always thought that I had some abilities, but, being a kid like that, you don't think of it.
Right. Yeah.
So, and, I didn't live in a haunted house. I didn't do any, I didn't really have any concept of spirits and ghosts and anything really. So that day, that was kind of the day it started. And, I am intuitive. I can pick up on spirit energy. I've been doing spirit rescue work for a long time now, a remote viewer. So, so in fact, my associate and I did 5 hours today. So, Yeah, we keep busy.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So, that's so interesting. Gettysburg. I can't believe I haven't been there yet. And I know Dale Katzmarik's Ghost Research Society is going there, I believe, this coming weekend. So I
Mhm.
wanted to make it, but unfortunately with work and all that, I couldn't go. But Gettysburg, I mean, I've heard so many amazing things. I mean, not just the battlefield, but a lot of the buildings around it and everything.
Right.
I mean, it's like, I mean, it's such a hotbed of activity, and it makes sense because of all the tragedy that occurred there. I mean, how many total men died there? I mean, thousands,
Oh, it was.
like
I think with
30,000.
all kinds of casualties, missing everything. I think it was like 120,000.
Okay, a lot more. Hello, I was way off
Yeah,
on
it
that,
was.
but
It
oh
was a
my.
lot.
So that was the introduction to your abilities and you getting basically hooked on the paranormal. I
Yeah,
didn't
and that was
realize
in that
that.
was in the mid. That was in early 70s, actually.
And you were 8 years old, you said?
Yeah, in fact, I'd say 68, 1968. I was about 9 or 10,
Wow.
and yeah. So as I got older and I was in high school, I started doing paranormal investigations on my own. And back then, the early 70s, nobody did anything like that.
I
You tell
know.
somebody you're a paranormal investigator, they kind of really look at you weird.
I know.
And so that's what I did. And it was word of mouth back then. And if somebody had an issue, I would eventually get around to me. I'd go take a look, give an idea of what was going on. But I wasn't clearing back then. I wasn't doing any spirit rescue work or anything like that. I was just, at that time, I hate to admit it, I was just out there looking for evidence. And, so I just wanted to hone my skills a bit.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
as time went on and I continued doing it, I had gotten married and I moved down to Maryland and I continued to do that. And then I had the Bigfoot encounter in May of '81, and that was down in Sykesville, Maryland, near Sykesville, Maryland, and that's kind of where my world of cryptids opened up. I became very, very interested. I wanted to know what I saw. I wanted to help explain the phenomena, and that's kind of where it took off.
Yeah, it's like the rest is history, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the word paranormal, I mean, it encompasses it all: ghosts, spirits, cryptids, UFOs, all of that. Do you prefer investigating cryptids as opposed to ghosts and hauntings, or is it kind of a 50-50 sort of thing for you?
I will get involved with a haunting or uh, something that's attached if somebody calls me in.
Yeah,
Uh, Spirit rescue can kind of involve a lot of things. If you open up sessions and they start showing up, you're going to start moving on. But if I do RVs and working with a client, there's a process and
yeah,
it takes a while sometimes. I mean, I've been involved with cases for years.
right.
In fact, I've been working on one case for 8 years now, and most of that is just aftercare and just keeping up with the clients and making sure everything stays. A lot of times, I work with people who are beacons and
Yeah,
who have the ability to sense spirit energy. It attracts to them. They suffer sometimes an attachment, but a lot of times their kids are also beacons. And, I'm kind of the guy who has to sit there and talk to them a bit about being a psychic and what to expect as they grow. And I've gone through that a few times with children. So, I there have been some success stories. I mean, there's one girl in particular who's 17 now, and she's quite a good little psychic, and she understands what it encompasses, and it doesn't scare her like it used to. But that's about all I do now as far as spirit work. But as far as cryptids and other paranormal, that's the bulk of my work. That's what people contact me about, and when we get into a big investigation, yeah, that's what we do. And I've got a really good team all over the country. It's we got boots on the ground on a lot of cases.
Awesome. You don't hear of people spending 8 years on a case. I mean, a lot
Mm.
of times it's a one night thing and that's it, but it's so important to follow up with the clients, because what can you really gather in just 8 hours, right? It's of my opinion that people should investigate a house or a business or a historical site for months, years to really get a good idea of what's going on. So,
Oh yeah, you've been doing this, so you know exactly like what's going on. It takes time, and it's not like on TV where you see them for an hour and they maybe encompass a couple of nights on there. Well, it just doesn't work out that way.
exactly. Yeah.
It's not an open shut book. I mean, uh, these cases, especially where you're talking about malevolency, it takes a while.
Mhm. It really yeah, absolutely. Your team, so you have people from all over, the United States, I would imagine internationally as well, f for actual, like, let's say, ghost research versus cryptid research, what are some of the similarities and differences between those 2 that you've discovered? Because, you really have your hand in the cryptid business, so you
Yeah,
guys know.
there's a lot of connections. Most cryptid activity will also have a possible spirit connection, something unexplained that's connected to it. A lot of cryptid sightings do that.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, there have been Bigfoot sightings in particular where there has been orb activity and other strange activity, even UFOs, and that kind of comes with the territory. When you're doing this full time, like we are, it's something that you start to notice very quickly.
Right, the
And of course,
patterns
I've
and
been doing this
everything.
for 40 years altogether. So, I've seen a lot of different and heard a lot of different things.
It's interesting because I'm of the opinion that there's some sort of like nexus between all these beings,
Hmm.
and it makes sense. Hearing you talk, it's like it does seem like, you can have a UFO encounter and then have other types of beings and whatnot. So it's interesting how that all plays out and exactly what that nexus is. I'm not sure if we're ever going to figure that out, but it does seem like there's some
Yeah.
connection between all these different beings, which is to me like super intriguing.
But I think we're getting closer. I really do. I think the overall paranormal field is a little more open minded than it used to be. People are starting to accept
Yes.
the out of the box type of activity, and when they can't explain it out of hand, then that's when you got to start going into the woo factor and start figuring something else is going on here.
Exactly. And not everyone is so timid and scared of the woo factor anymore. Yeah, people are
No.
more open to it.
Yep.
Absolutely. My goodness. So, what's your, because you've been doing, I've probably been on like one or two cryptid investigations in my whole
Hmm.
life. I specialize more in the ghost and spirit and hauntings realm. But what is your standard protocol from like, I guess, start to finish when investigating, let's say, Bigfoot or, the dog man or Mothman or any other type of cryptid?
Well, it depends on the case.
Yeah.
If you get a flap with a lot of sightings, like we're involved now with the Chicago Lake Michigan winged humanoid phenomena that's been
Yes.
going on now since, well, it's really started back in 2011, but it started to really pick up in 2017. And those cases kind of fell in our lap from the very beginning. Of course, MUFON got a lot of the early cases, but they didn't follow up on them. So what happened was these people who were making the reports contacted us, and there was two of us, Manuel Navarrete and I, were working on this stuff anyway. This was out of interest, really,
Yeah.
and we started making it known that if you want to report it to us instead of MUFON, feel free to do so. We'll check it out and we'll go ahead and help you. And that's what happened. And as time went on, it really started to pick up. That 2007 was really unbelievably busy. We were, I think we got a little over 50 credible sightings that year.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Just for that one, oh my gosh.
and it really, it really snowballed around July and August. And of course, for people who know about the Mothman and the apparent history of it, the harbinger theory, that brings tiding, bad news, bad disasters and such. I was getting phone calls literally 24/7 from residents in the Chicago area who were scared to death that something was going to happen, that this was something that was foretelling some type of disaster.
Oh my goodness.
So fortunately, that did not happen. But, since that time, we had a steady stream of sightings year round. It didn't matter what the weather or whenever. But around October 2019, then most of the sightings started to concentrate around O'Hare International. And since that time, I'd say 80%, if not more, of the sightings have been in and around the airport.
So do you have a theory as to why? Do you think it's technology based, interested in advanced technology or something like that?
It could be.
Right.
There's a lot of different things that just, for instance, just like particle accelerators and such. And there is a particle accelerator out in Cook County, which has been running off and on. It's kind of a hush hush deal out there. Who's to say they didn't fire that thing up and open up a rift
Exactly.
in the fabric? But I
Very
do
well
believe
could it be.
I believe it's one of two, if not both. As far as the theory goes, it's possibly an interdimensional being that's able to move between portals, vortexes, or whatever the situation is. More so dimensions than realities.
Right.
Or it's extraterrestrial. And we have had evidence to suggest that it may very well be extraterrestrial. We've had a UFO sighting there at the airport that where a humanoid was literally seen being brought up into the craft.
Oh my goodness.
We've had small alien being sightings, small humanoid sightings at the airport. And it's usually in a specific area around the cargo area. And there's actually, O'Hara has a cemetery there. It's Rest Haven Cemetery. Been there since they built it. And the activity seems to be around that cemetery. We've
That's
had
intriguing.
a lot of major sightings in and around that cemetery.
I bet you've researched like all who's buried there and all that to see if there's any sort of.
We've gotten a lot of different information. We're working on some new theories now. Possible ley line activity.
Oh, absolutely on that.
And if vortexes are opening up because of cross ley lines and such. So we got to look into that. We're going to
it's
try to
interesting.
try to
You
get some
hear of the
interesting.
Mothman, and then you hear of this winged creature around the Chicago area. Do you think it's the same, or do you think it's a different from the standard, Mothman sightings that people have had?
Yeah, I think it's different to a degree. I think it may, the Mothman at Point Pleasant, I had thought for a long time was a summoned being. And the reason I say that is because all the indigenous spirit energy around Point Pleasant.
I've actually heard that theory before myself. Makes sense.
It's palpable. I mean, I've been involved
Yeah.
with investigations there where the EVP and response has been unbelievably strong. And I think that strong energy may have actually summoned this being from some dimension or somewhere else. So that was in and around that West Virginia Ordnance Works area, what people call the TNT plant. So, that 1 year period of 66 and 67, there were about 30 really viable reports made. And so that all culminated into a lot of other activity, UFO, Men in Black, paranormal activity, a lot of ghost activity and stuff.
It's funny
and then,
how
of
that
course,
happens.
the collapse of the Silver Bridge, where 46 people died. So, I don't know if that's really related to it, but a lot of people seem to think it was a harbinger.
Could very well be. And hold that thought. We're going to get more into that
Okay.
right after the break. So stay tuned, folks. You are listening to the Afterlife Chronicles and Beyond on the WLTK-DB network with guest Lon Strickler. We will be right back.
Paranormal evidence. We scour the internet searching for true paranormal captures, information, and education. New methods mixed with old methods of capturing this mysterious phenomenon. Well, look no further for your ghostly voices than ghostly-voices.com. Nicole Tito and Lisa Crick take you on a journey into their paranormal world and provide you with true EVP and ITC audio captures, compelling information on debunking, some hilarious bloopers, and more. Remember, these two are veterans in the field and know how to capture the true evidence you are looking for. Ghostly-voices.com, your paranormal stop for true audio evidence. Ghostly-voices.com. A book of mystery, a book of one man's journey, a book of the afterlife, a book you must read. Ghost and Me by 5-time award-winning author Kevin Killen is a book of one man's journey in the search of the afterlife. Read of his chilling childhood experience, his investigative journeys, and his opinions of paranormal activity. Ghost and Me by Kevin Killen, an Ozark Mountain publication. Get your copy today online or wherever books are sold.
"22 minutes past the hour, you are tuning into the Afterlife Chronicles and Beyond on the WLTK-DB network. That's WLTK-DB.com. You can also get to the site by visiting theletstalk.com. I am your host, Nicole Strickland, and tonight we have been talking with Lon Strickler, Fortean Researcher, author, and blogger of the syndicated Phantoms and Monsters blog at phantomsandmonsters.com. So before the break, we were talking a little bit about Lon's journey, a little bit about some of the similarities and differences between, ghost research versus cryptid research, and then right before the break, talking about the winged creature, humanoid creature that's been seen around the Chicago O'Hare Airport. So let's get back into that. You know what I'm interested in is if there's a pattern in who witnesses these types of beings. Is
Well,
it
quite
mostly
frankly,
men or mostly
yeah,
women, or that fascinates me.
it's a wide range.
So
I
there's
thought that I thought that there would be a certain type of individual who would end up doing that, but no, really, it
really
went, yeah, all socioeconomic levels, different neighborhoods. It was a mix. And the interesting thing about this whole investigation from the beginning has been that the witnesses, and for those who are familiar with cryptid investigations, the witnesses stuck to their original story. They never embellished on it. Even when our investigators tried to get them to prod them into saying something, yeah, maybe you saw this, but no, that never happened. They stuck to it. It was
wow.
almost like they were imprinted by it. And
That's a good theory. That's a good point right there.
yeah,
Because you would think that someone would try to embellish it, but no.
they didn't. I mean, we have had 126 viable sightings so far ever since 2011. And any of those people that come forward and start changing what they said, they come right out of the queue. I will pull them off. And, I will not count that as a sighting. And so, it's been a remarkable investigation overall. But some of the factors that have come forward with it, like the extraterrestrial possibilities and UFOs and people seeing these things suddenly appear, then suddenly disappear. The red eyes, which were very, similar to what was seen at Point Pleasant. But the wings themselves, for the most part, now we've had different types, and I do believe that there have been at least 3 or 4 different beings that have come through over time. And early on, we had a few of the insectoid type wing, butterfly wings thing, moth wings. Then it kind of we started getting the owl feathered wings. We had 3 or 4 of those, and we have had 1 or 2 here and there. But I'd say the vast majority have been the bat or gargoyle-like membrane wings. And, the beings themselves have been described, for the most part, as 5 to 6 foot in height. We had one that was 7 foot just the other day. Many have the red eyes. They're dark in color. Sometimes they're seen as being shiny or wet. Very emaciated body. Sometimes the head is small and thin, but the wings are quite leathery, just like a bat or gargoyle. And the wingspan goes anywhere from 10 to 15 foot total.
That's
so
incredible.
These are quite a good sized being. And the witnesses, other than public, we've had officials, police officers. We had somebody in the mayor's office contact us.
Wow.
At the airport, we've had TSA security contact us. Pilots, air traffic controllers.
That makes sense.
People worked at the airport. Yeah, it runs the gamut. But I tell you, we've had people coming forward. And in fact, I do have a source at one of the airlines who's a ground supervisor. And they're telling me that, they had been hearing all this going on years ago when it started. So, when we started out doing the investigation, I was actually calling it the Chicago Phantom. Well, of course, when the press got a hold of it, they started saying, well, we're going to call it the Mothman since, that sounds good because the Mothman prophecies and everything.
Right,
so,
right.
So that's what they started calling it, the Mothman, Chicago Mothman. But then people out at the airport, they're calling it the O'Hare Mothman. So that's kind of what we're getting now.
Oh my God. I'm wondering if it has to, like when you hear of an earthbound or a ghost, there's different stages of manifestation. You might have just a silhouette, then you might be able to see some skin color and some facial features. I'm wondering if it's similar to this particular creature, and that maybe as it gains more energy, you're able to make more out of it. I don't know. That's just a thought. I don't know.
It's a possibility, I guess.
I
don't know. I mean, it is interesting that overall the descriptions have been very similar, and I'd say most of the people that come forward had no idea that these things have been seen. Even with all the publicity and everything, there are a lot of people had no idea what this thing was or heard about it.
That's fascinating.
Many times it's seen in groups. And, we had a sighting on the 22nd of July. And it was reported to us last week. And it was 3 employees at United Cargo who had got off work about 10:30. And they were walking out to their car, and they saw this thing out by just past the parking lot, over by the cemetery again. I mean, this was only like 100 yards from the cemetery, and the TSA security actually showed up and were surrounding it. They saw the vans in the whole 9 yards, and as they had their lights on, started walking towards us, the thing flapped its wings and started taking off, and it circled above them and was gone. Now, another aspect of these creatures is they have the ability to ascend without use of their wings, almost like a rocket.
It
It's
reminds
really
me of
strange.
the Jeepers Creepers character in the movie.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
If you read the book,
Yeah.
I've had many witnesses refer to the Jeepers Creepers.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and I got a whole chapter in there, Creepers, Jeepers.
Oh my God,
Jeepers
that's
Creepers.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh my! I'm wondering if there's like some relic or something at that cemetery besides just maybe a connection to someone that's buried there. That's so.
I don't know. You know, it's
I
you know, I guess the possibilities are endless, but
yeah.
you know, some of the stuff that, you know, some of the, you know, the in-depth research I've been doing, it may open up a few new doors to us. We're looking into a few things. This ley line possibility, because this is the only open ground at the airport.
That makes total sense.
The cemetery. But of course, if it's a ley line, it's running underneath all the concrete and moving out beyond the airport into the city. So
exactly.
Who's to say that there's a connection there? So that's something else we're going to follow up on.
That's the beauty of this field, because, you know, you have all these theories and, you know, doors don't necessarily close, but it's good to have all these doors open because it may lead somewhere.
Absolutely.
It's just so fascinating, all of this. And then Bigfoot. I want to hear about your Bigfoot encounter.
Okay. Well,
oh my God. I know you've probably shared it a gazillion times, right? I know, but
yeah,
I want to hear it.
But for you, I would definitely tell you.
If it's okay to share. You know,
yeah, no problem. I had an encounter. I also had a winged humanoid encounter in '88. And I can tell you about that too. So this was May of 1981. I was fly fishing on the South Branch of the Patapsco River, just east of Sykesville, Maryland, about a mile away. And this is an area I was very familiar with. I'd been there dozens of times, and I was actually standing in the river with chest waders on, and there was a dog, pretty good sized dog on the other side of the river. Now the river at this point is pretty narrow. It's probably about 20 yards at the most. And this dog was over there. There was some pretty tall weeds over there on the north bank. And as I watched it, it was just kind of going in and out, moving around. So I went back to fishing, didn't pay any mind. But a couple minutes later, I heard it yelping. And it let out a loud yelp. And when that happened, I looked over there and I saw this thing stand up in the brush. And I could see it from about mid-chest up. And it was hairy, kind of dark brownish in color. I didn't really get a good look at it until it started moving to my left out of the weeds and walked out of the weeds, standing on the bank of the river and turned towards me. And we locked eyes. Now, this thing is definitely male, because you can see the genitalia in this thing. I think I was about 40 yards away from it. And it was making a clicking sound, like it was gnashing its teeth. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I figured out that's what it was. And we looked at each other. And looking at it, the first thing I thought was that this is like a Neanderthal or some type of early man. And, you know, but it had the conical head. It had the real deep brow ridge. But, you know, if I had a gun, I wouldn't have shot it because it looked more human to me. So had a lot of hair. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But it was pretty good size. About 8 foot. Good size.
That is that's a good size right there.
Yeah,
Did it smell? You hear of the smells too with these
there
creatures.
was an odor, a slight odor. It reminded me of fox urine. Now, I used to use fox urine when I used to go hunting to mask my scent when I went deer hunting. So that's what it sounded like. Now, I have heard tales of them using skunk urine or fox urine and a lot of other things to mask, you know, when they're hunting. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that is. But anyway, this thing, we looked at it, we locked eyes about 10 seconds. And, what am I going to do? I'm just standing here in the water. I'm looking at this thing, and it turned quickly and started moving fast up into the woods. So what I did is I hauled out of the river.
Yeah,
went up
no
to my
kidding.
car and got in the car and drove into town and called the police. I told them what I saw. I don't know if they believed me, but they told me, they said, well, go back and we'll have an officer come and talk to you. And I figured, well, I get back here and it's only like a 3 or 4 minute drive. I'll be
Right.
sitting there waiting for an hour before somebody shows
No,
up.
I bet someone showed up right away.
To my amazement, there was a Maryland State police officer there with one of those wooden barriers already across the road.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
pulled up there and I told him, look, I made the report. He said, you got to get out of here. I said, well, why? I said, they told me to come back. I said, I don't care. You got to go home. Get out of here or go where. So I went home. I lived in Sykesville, so it didn't take me long to get home. So so about an hour later, I decided, well, I'm going to get in my car and drive back up there. And I did. And when I got there, I mean, it was like Grand Central Station. It was crazy. There were cars parked up and down the road. I had to walk about a quarter mile to get back to the barrier. And they had tape and stuff all over in the woods. They had dogs and trainers, searching around. And they had a big white tent set up across the river.
Oh my goodness.
I could hear the helicopters. Didn't see any helicopters. Heard them. And back then, the feds used to drive those black Wagoneers. They had 2 of those sitting there. They had Howard County cops. They had Maryland State Police, and they had the local Sykesville cops there. So eventually, I went home. I didn't stick around, and I called some of the news stations in Baltimore and told them what happened. They said, "Oh yeah, we're interested. Give us a call in a couple of days. We'll call you or whatever." Well, 5 days later, nobody calls me, so I call one of them, and they hang up on me. They don't want to talk to me. So I later did find out that somebody had a sighting of this thing about 3 hours before, about 5 miles downstream in Marriottsville. And they had called, but that isn't what sent all the authorities out there. Something was going on, I believe. Now, for those people that are familiar with the Baltimore, Washington area, there's a lot of facilities and buildings out in the boondocks that aren't marked. They're federal facilities. Nobody knows what's going on there. Who's to say this thing wasn't something that was escaped and they were chasing it down? That's always been my theory. I think this thing escaped somehow, and they were looking for it. And as soon as they'd get a call,
That
or
makes
something, they'd
sense.
respond to it.
I mean,
So,
to have all those cars and all the, the tents set up and everything like that. I mean, obviously they knew something. They knew more than they were letting on. That tells.
Right. So 40 years later, I really don't know what happened yet. I don't know what the whole thing was. Now, of course, that spurred my interest. Now, about 8 years before that, there was a phenomena and some sightings of what people were calling the Sykesville Monster. And a lot of the residents that lived along the river in Sykesville had this thing going into homes, into kitchen, into chicken coops, garages and stuff, just making a mess of things. And what people described what it was, they said it looked like a Bigfoot. And, then with my sighting, and after I later on, when BFR formed, I gave them a call and told them what I had seen back then. So, I was talking to a lot of the old witnesses back from that time. I was lucky enough to be working with one of the gentlemen who was a relative with many of these people. So he got me access to a lot of these witnesses, and I found a few others down the road too. So I don't know if what I saw was the Sykesville monster or what it was, but quite frankly, there have been other sightings there, even to this day, and a lot of that's built up now. So there's still something roaming around there.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes you wonder. I mean, what are your thoughts and theories as to the origins of Bigfoot? Because you hear so many different things. You hear interdimensional being, you hear
Yeah.
it's a flesh and blood creature. I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
I think it's a flesh and blood creature, but I think it has the ability to cloak itself at some degree. I think those sightings of these creatures in the Pacific Northwest, in Florida, along the Gulf Coast, and a few other places up in Canada, I think those are indigenous beings. I think they are actually a part of the fauna. When you hear of sightings in like Florida and Pacific Northwest, there are a lot of sightings of family groups and more than one.
Yes.
In other parts of the United States, in Eastern Canada, many times it's just one. Now, is that just a singular Bigfoot or Sasquatch that's able to cloak itself, or is it interdimensional? Is it moving in and out of some dimension, or is it even extraterrestrial? Who knows?
Right. Yeah, I've heard that theory too. And you
There's a
hear
lot of theories out there, but I know the one I saw was definitely flesh and blood. But who's to say it wasn't something that could move in and out, if it even was one? I mean, I don't know. Because of what happened and the government thing, involvement and
Yeah,
all. Who knows what this thing was?
exactly. Yeah, that makes sense. But you do hear of them existing on near rivers and creeks and near the banks and all that. And you happen to see one right there. So I don't know. I mean, there's so many theories circulating. I agree too. I think it is some sort of flesh and blood creature, but you hear of both similarities and differences in terms of different regions. So
Mhm.
that's, opens up a whole another door.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people that dispute that, and I can understand that. Not everybody's open minded to the interdimensional or possibly a supernatural cryptid being, but
Yeah,
we have a lot of other cryptids that pop up here and there. I think for the most part, cryptid sightings are supernatural sightings, and
absolutely. Hi, Michael.
just like upright canines, dog man, same thing. We've had a lot of that here in Pennsylvania, and there's some aspects to the reports that just make you sit up and wonder, this isn't right. Of course, this thing can't be indigenous. We got these tall werewolf like beings that look almost like lichens from the Underworld series. This thing's
Oh my
huge.
God.
I mean, 9-10 foot. Seriously, we've had hunters that have walked up on these things. They stand their ground, but the hunter ain't going to shoot this thing with birdshot. Just no way in hell it's going to adapt him. So, yeah. And I think like most cryptids, they have some type of infrasound abilities to kind of stun people. So
I've heard that.
But we've also had quadruped dogman like creatures. Sighting we had in particular was up around Tuscarora State Park, where this hunter was up in his blind, and he's sitting up there watching this thing crossing the field. He's up there deer hunting, and this huge canine saunters up to in front of him, sits down the field, sitting there looking at him. He said the back, it was kind of sloped like a hyena. It had muscular arms and legs, and it had the head of a wolf. And he said this thing was huge, and it just watched him like he was the next. He was coming for the dinner bell. So he said it sat there for about 15 minutes and walked off. He stayed up there for at least an hour because he wasn't coming down. And
Right. I don't blame him.
Yeah, he eventually came down and left, but God knows what he saw. I mean,
You do hear a lot of crossover between Bigfoot and Dogman. I know Linda had a question in chat. Linda Meyer. She said, "Have you done any active recent investigation of Bigfoot? Like recently? I don't know if she means like within
Well,
the last month or.
yeah, not recently. Many times, the big, we get a Bigfoot sighting in an area, and I don't go out like I used to. But I have plenty of people on my team that can go out there and look, and they beg me to give them reports. So we've got 22 people on my team, and I got people locally that can go into Pennsylvania, New York, or wherever else, and they'll do the investigations, and that's what I do. I send it off to them. If they can't do it, then I got 15 other affiliate groups that'll handle it as well. So yeah,
That's
it's a pretty nice
amazing.
network.
Yeah, there's something awesome about that whole area out there, Pennsylvania, Maryland, all of that. I love it. I mean, this is kind of off topic, but it makes me wonder, why am I still in San Diego? I mean, it's a nice city, yes,
And
but
I
I
wanted to
just,
move to
oh,
San Diego at one point.
oh, funny. Okay, we'll swap places, but
There you go.
I'm biased because I am a believer in cryptids and supernatural beings, but what's your personal way of handling someone who is just such a cynic? Oh no, there's no such thing as those, and no way, no way, no way at all. I mean, how do you handle that?
I don't even get in an argument with them.
Yeah, see there, that's
You can believe what you want to
yes,
believe. I don't
exactly.
care.
Yeah,
But the funniest thing is when you get somebody who was a skeptic and then has an encounter.
yeah,
Then
yeah.
they're like, yeah, well, I never thought that thing was out there, but I saw it, so I believe now. And okay,
That's
and
kind
that
of
happens a
neat to see
lot.
that. Yeah, it's kind of neat to see that. You don't
Yeah,
want to say I told you so, but then again, um, well, yeah, it's so fascinating. Okay, so you take reports from all kinds of individuals. Are there ever any, I'm sure this has happened to you, but are there ever any circumstances where you can outright tell when someone's just maybe making something up or embellishing? Like,
yeah.
what's your, I mean, besides just common sense, what's your what's your way of trying to determine that?
Well, my policy is to listen to anybody who wants to talk or send a report. I give everybody the benefit of the doubt at first, but
Yeah,
after I look
yeah,
into it and determine the viability of it, then I'll make my decision either to have somebody look at it or just to discount it in hand. So um, when you take a report from someone, you had just become a part of that encounter or the report. So I
yes.
believe that you're obligated to look in it as best you can and
Hmm.
take as much time as you can to do it. But if it's obviously faked or some
Yeah.
type of lie or such, I won't even bother with it.
Yeah, that's pretty smart and professional to do. You can, I mean, and then it's common sense too. You can just kind of tell when
Yeah.
someone's, not really being truthful. But getting back to Dogman, now that creature's, from what I know, is I guess more associated with, is it Michigan? Is that where I think I read that it was first encountered in Michigan, but I know there have been other people that have encountered it as well. I'm wondering, I've heard a lot of crossover between Dogman and Bigfoot. I think they're two separate beings, but
Well,
I'm
there
on,
have been reports that could have been confused.
right,
The
right.
the Michigan Dog Man, the initial Michigan Dog Man was a hoax. I mean the film that was associated with it and all that the cable film that was the Gable film. Excuse me,
Yeah.
that was a hoax,
I remember reading that, but there have been other
right?
sightings there
But there have been
too.
other sightings, and
Right.
I mean I've had a lot of sightings, especially in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, that seem to be pretty viable. Wisconsin has a lot of sightings, especially in the south central part of the state, around
Yes,
the Kettle
yes.
Moran area and down into the Bray Road and that part. Of course, Linda Godfrey looked into that for years, and those sightings seem to hold up. I've talked to several people who either own property there or have been or had an encounter with one of these things. And Linda actually made a pretty good film not too long ago about it. And yeah, it's intriguing. But the whole upright canine and dogman phenomena has kind of spread out into other states, in particular, Ohio, Pennsylvania, all the upper Midwest. It's becoming more prevalent. So I don't know. I mean,
it spread.
Yeah, that seems to be the old Rust Belt. I guess would be what you consider dogman, upright canine territory.
Yeah, and it's just all of this is just so fascinating, and it's it makes me wonder too if some of the sightings people may think they're seeing a half man, half canine creature, but in reality maybe it's Bigfoot or vice versa. I've not seen either yet, so I'm waiting for that day. I'm open to it, but it's just so fascinating. We only have about 10 minutes left. What is your most unusual encounter that you've ever come across?
Well, I had an encounter with a winged humanoid back in 1988.
You mentioned, yeah.
And the funny thing about that is that humanoid that I saw, me and two other people saw, was very similar to what's been seen in Chicago recently. I had met up with a friend of mine who I went to school with. We were down in Baltimore, and we were sitting there having lunch, and he mentioned to me about he knew I was into paranormal. He used to go to Gettysburg with me when we were kids. We used to camp out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he knew what I was into. So he asked me, he said, look, he said, a friend of mine and I, and they were both scoutmasters at the time, we're going up to Camp Conewaga next week because those troops have been camping out in the woods, and they're getting run out because they're hearing all these crazy screams at night, and they don't know what the hell they're dealing with. I said, okay, well, I'll go up there. So next weekend I went up there, and I met him and his buddy, and we hiked into the woods. We set up camp, got everything all set up, 3 different tents, got a fire going. And by that time it was about 6 p.m. So we were sitting around. Nothing happened that night. That was a Friday night. So we just went to sleep, and but we did, all 3 of us heard something moving around in the campsite. And, I thought maybe it was one of those guys getting up using the latrine or whatever.
Yeah. Right.
But when we got up and mentioned it to each other about all the sound, we looked around, nothing was disturbed. So we figured maybe it was a deer or something got into there's a lot of wildlife up there. So anyway, that day we were hiking out into the woods. We were out pretty long. We were out most of the day, just getting a sense of the area. Maybe we could find out what was causing all this screaming sounds and stuff. And we got back to camp, I guess, about 6 or 7. It was starting to come dusk by that time because it was in the fall. And it got dark, real bright night. The moon was really bright that night. So we're sitting around talking football, whatever, and then we hear about 11 o'clock, this screaming sound. And, quite honestly, I thought it was just like, an animal scream of some type. I didn't even think, I didn't think much of it. You hear a lot of stuff out in the woods at night. So not long after that, we heard another scream. Now, this sounded like a woman or a child screaming. And it was loud because it was kind of moving in and out, too. So we're thinking, okay, and what the hell is this? This is something unusual. So we just sat there, and we were hoping to hear it again. But, so I guess about 1 o'clock or so, we were still sitting here talking, and I got up, stretched my legs, and I walked out onto the trail because the trail was right there, and it was right along the Conewaga Creek. And the creek was real shallow that time of year. So, I got this sense that there's something going on. I just sense something weird. You get that feeling. And
you get that feeling, yeah.
Yeah, so
and it doesn't leave either.
No, it doesn't. You get back. I got back.
It doesn't leave.
And I told those guys, I said, look, let's grab the flashlights, go up on the trail a bit, and see if we see anything. Okay. So we're in a line. We're walking down the trail. Didn't get more than 50 foot from the campsite. And we all three saw this thing standing in the creek.
Oh,
The big
my gosh.
the red eyes. I'm bright red eyes. And by the time we got our flashlights on this thing, it jettisoned up into the air.
And was
with
gone,
a
I
whooshing
bet.
sound.
Oh my gosh.
And when it got to its apex, we heard it scream. And it was loud. And then it took off and it was screaming as it went away. So we got back to campsite. I mean, we were running back to campsite. Those guys were freaked. I guess I was. I hate to admit, maybe I was scared a bit, but my buddy was really scared. I mean, he wasn't even talking. So me and the other guy talked
I can
about
imagine.
it,
My
and
gosh.
we said, well, we saw the red eyes. I mean, what the hell is that all about? Of course, I knew about the Mothman stuff by that time, and I didn't even imagine I saw a Mothman. But the guy said, did you notice all that stuff on its back? And I did. There were some structures on the back, but if it was wings, it never opened up. It just jettisoned as the way it was. So my friend, he wasn't going to stick around there. So him and the other guy went up to the administration building, and they slept up there for the night. But I was by myself the rest of the night. I wanted to know what the hell that thing was.
You brave soul. My goodness.
Nothing else happened. It was quiet the rest of the night.
Oh my goodness. I probably would have done the same thing though, because you're curious, right? Linda actually asked, and it's funny because I was thinking the same thing. So she literally adopted the same question I had. But Wendigo and Dogman, do you think they're the same thing?
No. Basically, a Wendigo is a possessed human.
Right.
If you read Chad Lewis's book, and he put out a very good book about Wendigos and the lore behind it. It's basically a human who's affected somehow, either by some type of entity or a sickness as such, and becomes a cannibal. Basically, they literally kill and eat humans and whatever they got, and that's the real gist of a Wendigo.
I've heard of his book. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, it's a great book. But there's been a lot of connotations about Wendigos and such,
right?
Many of the tribes up in Canada or the upper Midwest and such, had the Wendigo lore, believe it's a some type of spirit or something that affects a man or such. But no, it's nothing related to the Dogman.
Yeah, you get different variations of it and such. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. I mean, I have so many more questions for you. I'm going to have you back on if you want sometime in the future.
You got me anytime you want me.
Yeah, 3 minutes left. Oh my goodness. I mean, God, I wanted to get into Black-Eyed Kids and what else here? I mean, the Fae, gnomes, all of that good stuff. But I'll definitely have you back on. Thank you so much for coming on. So people, if they want to reach you, obviously your website, phantomsandmonsters.com, but you have books as well. Where can people buy your books? Because you have many of them.
Yeah, they're on Amazon, and I do have a new publisher now. Beyond the Free Publishing is my new publisher. So many of these books are being republished. Okay. And the first 5 books are actually going to be edited and put into one big volume eventually. And
great. That's awesome.
So I am working on another book now about the pale humanoids, the crawlers and walkers, and some of the sightings that are associated with that. That's a phenomena that's fairly new.
I can't wait.
But it's happening nationwide and all over North America. So, I'm learning more as I go into that because
oh my
gosh,
just a lot of
stuff. Yeah.
And I'm learning from you. Linda just said, "Yay, he's coming back," and Michael Laciana said, "Oh my God," I forget what Michael said, but he said something awesome. I'm sorry, Michael, I totally forgot what you just said, but it was an awesome comment. And there goes Kaylee, my cat. She always seems to meow either at the beginning or end of the show. But she's going to be 18 years old on August 18th. So, yay.
Yeah, I got one up here too.
I know.
He's going to be 16.
Wow, see
Yeah.
that? I love it. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for coming on. And again,
Anytime.
Phantoms and Monsters, the blog is amazing. It's a syndicated, very popular blog. I think you've had something like 33 million views or something like that, if I read
Yeah, it's something like that.
the stats right. So amazing. If you want anything on cryptids, pretty much anything, go to phantomsandmonsters.com. Also, check out Lon's books on Amazon as well. I will have you back on, so we'll definitely book something.
Yeah, I want to
Thank you
get
so
you
much.
on too, and we'll talk about this Queen Mary situation.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot that's not true in the news, just so
Well,
people
we'll
know.
find
But
out.
we'll find out exactly. So,
Yeah.
anyways, a huge thanks to Lon for coming on. Like I said, we'll get him back on soon. Next week, I have the Reaps on. They're going to talk all about their investigations and their research into the paranormal. And then, of course, on the 19th, I have a reschedule with Marie D. Jones. And then the 26th, I have Tristan David Luciati and Seth Michael to talk about the All Around Us documentary, fabulous documentary, and then, of course, their research as well. So I want to thank my listeners tonight for tuning in to another episode of the Afterlife Chronicles. And as always, we are bridging the gap between mortality and the afterlife, one experience at a time. See you next week, guys, and have a great night and a great weekend.